Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp Breaking Boundaries in Education. Jerry, I think it's really interesting, and people wear multiple hats throughout their career, and we need so much perspective because of that. And I think we're going to dig into those perspectives a little bit today.
Yes. Our guest, Dr. Drew Hinds, we met him in California at a ClassLink event that we were having. And he was there with one of our frequent guests, Ken Shelton.
And yes,
and we were talking about all things technology, especially we were talking about bias and equity in technology at that time. But today, Drew is here with us as our special guest. And Drew has such, as you said, a diverse perspective. He's been a teacher. He's been at the state level. He is working now with Q. Has a lot of things going on. So welcome to the show, Drew. And tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and what you've been up to since we saw you last.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie and Jerry. It's really good to see you again. And I don't know, my background is, like you said, kind of spotted, diverse, dark.
Love
it. And I think you start as a teacher, you have a foundation for learning whatever that takes, whether it be adult learning or your own learning, right? And so I think in the context of each position that I've had throughout my career, I had someone ahead of me, someone behind me, and someone to the side, someone an up, an over, and a back. And that social construct has kind of guided me as a teacher. It guided me into the district office and doing some trainings and some tech coordination work, and then tech director work, and then onto the state and even in the private sector. I think along that road, it's really fun to think about the people you journeyed with, the people you kind of aspired to be like, the friends you still do life with, and the people you brought along that are doing some really innovative things now.
I love that. Someone ahead of you, behind you, and beside you. That's really what we all need right now with all of the changes going on in the education world. We need all of those perspectives and all of those people. So can you tell us a little bit about someone that was ahead of you that you kind of aspired to be like?
Yeah, that's fun to think about because I think in each career as a teacher, Josh McConnell was that. As a tech coordinator, John Weeks was that. Dave Guile was in there. And then at the State Department, Dr. Ray Lindley, we did even some international accreditation work while I was at the State Department. So, I think you build memories and you build skills alongside those people in context to your relationship with them. And I think Dr. Ray Lindley's kind of fun to think about. He's got a accrediting body that's called Array Global that I still do some work with. Once in a while, it gives me an international trip or two a year and the chance to see another country and the way that they're doing education, which hasn't grown up in perhaps maybe an industrial era where we go from kind of Dewey and Thorndike to what we've got now. It's really interesting to see different countries and where they come about. So Dr. Ray Lindley is probably the one I'd pick out. I've been really fortunate. My dad at the age of about 13 sat at the end of my bed and said, "I'm not going to be the guy for you. We've got to find multiple mentors for you." And so jumped into Boy Scouts, and I think about badging a little different than most people because I had 72 badges across an Eagle Scout and the whole thing, as you build through that. And every weekend I would come home, and he was a teacher for almost 40 years, a middle school science and math teacher. And, he had that he has that sarcastic humor.
For middle school.
And a little bit less hair than I do, but I'm getting there. But I think my dad gave me a lot of foundational perspective there too, because he was looking ahead and identifying the person that I would learn from, which taught me to learn quicker. You can get information as a teacher or as a IT director from a book or from some experience, but you're going to grow faster if you're in a mentoring relationship, a mentor or mentee relationship, because you're going to be able to ask questions in the moment, in the context, and be able to learn from that person. So I've been really fortunate to jump in. Usually it takes me a year or two to get kind of used to and get your stride in a position. And then, by year 3 or so, you're looking at challenges in a different way.
That's right. Now, what work did you do at the State Department? Because I think we're all familiar with schools and technology departments, but the State Department, we often wonder about what did you do there?
So I think the most interesting things I got to do there was alternative schools. So I started with standards and assessments. All kinds of work in standard and assessment categories occur at the State Department, but in Oregon, at least, 200 or 300 people work to support the entire state. And when you compare that to the Department of Transportation that was right next door, was thousands of people. So as far as state agencies go, federal dollars, at least in the past, have flown down to a state and then county offices for title programs, Title 1 through 10. And then, as we know, like Title 1 through 3 have kind of recently been in limbo, but then re-released for in support of artificial intelligence, which has been really fun to watch. At the State Department, you kind of get to fly at this lens where you see things occur, and you can see a trend and a pendulum kind of swinging back and forth sometimes from a more constructive, open framework to a more tighter, iterative feedback loop, where people are looking more closely at the details. But it's always at the state level an exchange of data to the school district or LEA for money. So that's the currency that you have between county offices and school districts.
Yes. And then today you were doing some different work.
Oh yeah, that's down in Southern California. I could be at down here. I could be at an artificial intelligence work study meetup, something every weekend. But this weekend happens to be an Eduprotocols event. John Krupo and Kim Vogie and the team is at Laguna Beach, about 20 minutes from me, with about 300 teachers. And each session is an Eduprotocol. And Eduprotocols are really interesting. They're a lesson frame where you insert or you inject new content to the same framework. So you teach something, let's say with the Cyber Sandwich, or the one that I just walked out of, I think was Iron Chef. So there's a content in slides, and then you have a secret ingredient that's part of the slide. And you just insert new content into that same activity, and the kids have a chance. They don't have to, the cognitive load is not on learning the activity to learn. The cognitive load that they're focused on is on the content that's new. And that's just a fascinating new way of thinking. It's Madeline Hunter provided us a frame of, check inductory, get attention, input, check for understanding. This provides 50 of those that allows you to kind of help the students understand in a fun way what the structure is going to look like, and then inject new content the next day and teach some new concepts. So when I was thinking about the standards, when I was doing some of the Common Core work at the state, we counted the number of standards and found that there was, more standards than days in the year. And that led to some real serious conversations around Appendix A of the Common Core in math and language arts. And now you see it, teachers just using that and applying it, and using tools like Learning Genie or Class AI or School AI or Magic School, or insert your Gemini or Copilot have tools that do lesson planning now that are going to expedite, make teachers more effective. It's really an exciting time in education.
It is, and there's also some concern about some of those tools that some of the output is not quality. So how is what you are just working on today, how can that overcome some of that? And how was AI a part of that, if it was?
Yeah, I can kind of hit that in two capacities. One, within the Eduprotocols, that the team continues to kind of refine. You use tools like Padlet or Edpuzzle. Those tool sets are pretty common amongst teachers in their utility anyway. They're using those, right. But it gives a meaningful structure for how you use it. And so each of those tools are building a little shiny star or something that shows up and then allows you to kind of automate something with artificial intelligence. I think at this point in education, we're focused on agents to support teachers, tools and agents to support teachers. And I think most of us can see a time pretty soon as maybe the mid-year to end of this year, where you have spaces or whatever you want to call them, where students are interacting with the intelligence to as a thought partner, pushing them to ask more questions. And teachers can frame that up with both documents and support resources, but also they can pre-slug questions that it's going to frame to stay focused on, to keep the student coming back to that inquiry experiment or that topic, whatever they're working on. There's some tools out there that also do some of the co-writing type of tools that kind of help a student with just to be able to see and receive instant feedback. I think as a student, I would have really benefited from that. My goodness, I really struggled as a speller and as a learner, really as early as third and fourth grade. And can you imagine if you had a non-judgmental, always on agent walking with you through the day? And what I've really, and this is where I really get frustrated sometimes at where we're at, is learning should be anywhere. If a student is wondering about something, they shouldn't have a limitation of internet connectivity outside of the walls of the school. And I worked hard as an IT director to make sure that we were attended to the building with reliable internet connectivity, dependable devices, accurate data, and then just-in-time support for both the families and the students and the teachers. If you provided that basis for innovation, you saw people do things that they wouldn't do otherwise because you provided the structure to support them in that. And I did that in larger districts and smaller districts. And now I get to work on the private sector some with T-Mobile to be able to connect to the outside, the network beyond the classrooms with, hotspots, phones, and out on the baseball field.
It's so important because the learning should not stop at 4:00. And students should have access to devices and internet, 24/7.
Ubiquitous. Yeah.
Yes.
Before, it should be a utility, right? The internet should be a utility. We should always have that connectivity. And I like what you said, Drew, in that they need to have those devices. They need to have that connectivity so that they have that opportunity to continue to be curious and ask questions. And then I think that solves some of the problems, some of the challenges that we face with AI when there's still that conversation. Are kids going to cheat? Kids are going to cheat. We shouldn't use AI. No, the AI tools that we can build for personalization can be built to not give answers, but to push students further, asking them questions. To push their thinking further. And then others, it could be there just for the wondering component, right? Kids, if you're curious, you want to know, you have someone at your disposal, something at your disposal to ask. So, we're on the edge of these really exciting times. And your work that you did, locally with connectivity and access, where does it fall now? How are some schools ahead of the game and have that foundation to implement AI? And then where are we with some other schools that just don't? And how do we get everyone so that there's equity?
Boy, great question. I think, where are we at now? Where are schools at now? I'd like to think back to a continuum of a school district that I worked with. It was a larger district of 50,000. And a smaller district of about 10,000. And on a continuum, one of those structures was more rigid, and you really had to, there was literally two forms for a field trip. You had to fill out one to get approved to even be considered for the next. But in an application or software environment, it was also really difficult and cumbersome to get anything to the point where teachers had access to it on their school computer, right? So on a continuum of like that rigid structure and more safe, because that is a continuum of cybersecurity posture that a district has chosen. So to a certain degree, their level of risk is lower if they take less risks to give teachers and students more access, right? And then that other small district that maybe was more willing to take some of those risks and was a smaller school district, it was a free-flowing process where students and teachers had access and were trusted fully in their access to just about anything they wanted in terms of applications or software, or, there has to be a CIPA compliant, a Children Internet Protection Act filter that's a certain threshold. But other than that, it's a district's approach to really cybersecurity, and then a philosophy of learning in terms of learning and teaching with fidelity in terms of very rigid structures and checking to make sure that certain things are covered. And then a district that maybe takes a more constructive approach. I would say Thorndike and Dewey. I mean, we're 100 years past this, but we're still kind of having those same conversations. And if I could just take one step further, it's interesting that ClassLink is a partner with districts, ClassLink and other tools that allow single sign-on. But teachers are at a point where they're having to log on multiple devices, right? The multi-factor authentication problem.
Yes.
And we're headed towards a really great way. And I had a conversation with the CEO of ClassLink at ISTE this last 2 weeks ago now.
Yes.
And he had a great insight that, really pass keys are the future. That's really where we're going, which is, are you human questions? Those ones that like you check something that allows, it's really the middle of the continuum. It's not a cyber, key, but it is something you have and something
Yes.
And so and the third thing, there is something you are. We're never going to have children giving thumbprints and facial recognition. Parents will not tolerate that. That is not going to be a thing, at least in the next period when, parents are aware of it and it's not ubiquitous. So we're not going to have the advantage of the fingerprint or the facial recognition for a while. So we got to work within those other two. And he provided some really great insight about where ClassLink was in terms of simplifying the process of getting, and we've all been there. If we've been in a school, kindergartners take 10 minutes to log in.
10 minutes, long.
That loss of instructional time. I mean, if you could just get them past that with the little cards that ClassLink provides or other provides, at least you've gotten past that first barrier. And again, reliable internet connectivity, dependable devices, just-in-time support, and accurate data. If you, as an IT director, are providing those things of homeostasis, everybody's happy and your name isn't a cuss word.
Right. That's true.
Innovation can happen.
Yes. I'll upload that.
Yeah, I read recently along those lines, districts lose 10 days a year with logins and trying to find out where you are, what's going on. Yeah. So that's 10
or internet outages. So when you walk up to a school, you expect to have to check in with your driver's license if you're a guest, right?
Right.
What happens when the internet connection goes down to their head in and there's no redundant backup? I think that's where the company I work for now does, the high-speed internet connection that's a redundant setup in the front office. So at least there's some way to use for check-in and check-out and attendance. At least the front office operations can continue. You're not going to run state testing off of that connection, but it's still pretty fast for 10 or 20 people in the front office, and maybe in the modular where they moved it in the back, where the YMCA occurs or the Head Start program occurs. Those are great places where kind of at the edge of their network where companies like T-Mobile can help.
Yes, absolutely.
What's so interesting is the fact that we started talking in the beginning about how you have so many different perspectives because of the many hats that you wear. We've already in this conversation started talking about pedagogy, yet, strong cybersecurity as well, which doesn't always come from the same person. So I love
absolutely 100%.
And I love that. I love your several mentions of Dewey. He's one of my favorites from the past. That as a mentor, I had met him. But
through
also,
character AI or through real
well,
life?
yes, it's real. I can.
Because that's a fun
I-
experiment if you haven't done that on AI. So
That's
yeah.
what stations. Yes, yes. I know. I was teaching my mother some different AI tools. She wanted to have a conversation with, I can't remember who from history, about the wars and the Civil War and signing Declaration of Independence. She really was really interested in that. And that's what that's what it's there for. But I'm going to hover a little bit over what you said earlier from the perspective of being at the state. You've seen the pendulum swinging.
Mm.
What do you see? Have you seen? What are you seeing now that is perhaps coming back, or maybe AI is a disruptor to help bring it back? What are you seeing?
That future conversation is probably the most fun to. I think as we think about the future, kids have to be at the center of that, and humans need to be part of that. So the movements around humans at the center of making decisions around AI, super important. If there's anything you can volunteer or put your energy towards right now, is to think about how do people matter in the future, and oh boy, and how do kids matter? I think I've had conversations with my wife recently about this. Like, I think teaching is one of the professions, because of the apprenticeship model that I talked about a little bit earlier. I think that apprenticeship is so critical, that there's wisdom that comes from tacit, explicit. Like, explicit is the information you could find through an AI or through a Google search. Tacit is wisdom. It's knowledge that you capture from experience. And I think we're going to have to really double down on our humanity in order to make sure that in the future, teachers are the ones driving the train as we implement technologies. Now, that said, the executive orders and the additional guidance coming recently put us in a position where teachers are at the forefront, at the cusp of change, without too many barriers of protection. And this stuff happens so fast. It seems like every 2 months to 3 months is the same as a year or 2 years in the past, because it's just the iteration. I was at a meetup this last week about vibe coding, and a couple of hours with Kanal from Orange County and others. It's just moving so fast. Teachers can generate their own applications. It's one of the things that Mike in Laguna Beach is doing. As Laguna is one of the ones that are using this AI Trust You framework, which essentially asks the student to determine how much they're using of AI and to report that kind of in the activity. It's kind of a CC BY or the ability to kind of cite a resource, but you're saying how much of it was AI, which gives kind of a morality conversation about it.
Sure.
Jamie, I know I jumped around, but I want to come back to this question of the future of like where we're headed. I think it's not going to be very long until we have I'm going to sound like I have a tin hat on right now, and I'm just going to accept that. But if you would have said 2 years ago, we'd be where we're at right now. So anyway, I think I'll just kind of own that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see agents being able to do work for us. And so agentic AI and the element of having multiple agents, it's really about how many agents can you afford and how many can you feed that are going to be working while you're sleeping, not just to generate income, but to do work for you. Some of the agentic tools that are more advanced right now, I would just say some of those tools that we mentioned earlier are a little bit more advanced than others. And they're already able to do some work for you, whether it be build out a lesson plan and unit plan and slides, or identify spaces that you could design. But I use ChatGPT and Gemini for different purposes as a thought partner. So I'll get a chat thread going, and then I'll put it into an agentic mode, whatever that is called in that particular tool, and I'll let it spin a little bit and do some work for me. And I think in the future, some of that work is going to be employable work. I know that sounds crazy, but I think you're going to have an agent that's able to do 40, 60%. I mean, you can already automatically generate a podcast and learn LM. So you upload your dissertation and say, create podcast, and it's not, I'd say it's an 80, 90% valid, but it's close enough. And those tools are going to get better with the tools we have. So I think the future we've got to be preparing students for is a world where they're the leader of their destiny, and they're the moral structure, the moral foundation of how they're going to learn and grow. And that means that at kindergarten, we've got to start thinking with those kiddos about what they want to, not what they want to do, but what they want to be. Those are two different things.
Yes. It's funny. I'm not ready to give my credit card to agentic AI yet. Not yet. I'm not ready to hand over the credit card. But I do see so many great opportunities and risks, right? They always go hand in hand. And we talked about that in the past episode, actually. But I also, someone who was on the podcast before, Darren Coxon, who actually is also doing a lot of vibe coding with Claude right now to create his own app for the benefit of all of us. And she said something that I thought was really, really important. I mean, he's going to town with AI, so he knows all the possibilities. But he said something that really kind of resonated with me. He said something about the fact that there's something so rewarding about creating and doing things for ourselves. So how is it going to feel, and how is that going? What are we going to feel comfortable offloading with agentic AI? And then what are things that we do want to just keep for ourselves and have that pride? So that's about it. I want to see where we go. I do, because I just
be really interesting.
The Hamptons for my mom, and I'm so excited to do it, and I loved doing it. Just simple things like that. I use AI to help me, but I didn't offload the whole thing. So that's where I'm curious where it's going to go. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, we mentioned a little bit before when we were talking about the RIASEC and the Holland framework. And I'd love to stitch that in, because workforce preparation it starts as early as kindergarten. Frankly, a kid's bent at 2 years old, you can start to see some of their interests and their aptitudes. And it's fun to see where a child's bent starts to shape their interests. And if you can foster that and feed it, a kid's interests and their occupation grows out of those initial interests. And the Holland framework and the RIASEC, it's a realistic, investigative, conventional, social, and artistic. RIASEC provides a framework to think about a student's strength-based skill set at earlier ages. And it's used all the way up to the military in terms of helping people identify occupations that they would be happy doing and that they would be good at. And I'll never forget a couple of conversations I had as an assistant principal and working with the RIASEC in Cajon Valley with Eddie Alago and David Mishiro down there. Those students, as soon as they knew their 2 or 3 in their code, they could identify some of the skill sets they would want to be growing and the possible occupations that would turn into. We don't know what all those occupations are going to be in the future. But again, to go back to what a student wants to be, what difference they want to make and their why, and not what they want to do. Those are 2 different things. And that's something uniquely human.
Yeah.
That is something uniquely built into a relationship between a teacher and a student.
Right. And I always like the question for students too, what kind of problems do you want to solve? I think that helps them move into their career as well.
I cannot imagine, Jerry, having a superintendent like you come into your class and ask a student.
Right.
So, oh my gosh, that would just be the best day ever to watch that student struggle with that and know that you meant it.
Yeah.
So important as we move forward. Wow. So with all, we love this question, Drew. With all of the things that you've done and all of the ways that you've had your hand in education and the things that you have seen, what has become clear?
Boy, I think my last year in my teacher education program, I really focused in on the relationship between a teacher and a student. And I think the validity of that, both my parents were teachers, my sister's a teacher, my great-great-grandfather was a teacher, my great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother was a teacher along the Oregon Trail. I come from a family of educators that looked at how a relationship between a student or a learner, I'll just say a learner, because sometimes, when you're playing followership and leadership, those two things can take different roles based on age. It's not universal. So I think the learner and the teacher can be, that relationship that's where the magic happens. And I think the fastest pace of learning is that coaching model, that learning from another person that's had some experience. And it'll be really interesting how that continues to take place in the classroom, where learning happens. And frankly, wherever learning happens is where I'm tagging everything now in my socials, because I really want people to think about what happens outside of the classroom and the school as much as inside. And if, as Jamie put it, if students aren't allowed to wonder with an agent outside of school, you're going to have a growing divide between students that have multiple agents and private tutors and students that don't have that same access. And I want all students to have access to that.
And it really brought us full circle back to your thinking about having someone ahead of you, beside you, and behind you. So
way to wrap it, Jerry.
Yeah, that was great.
Perfect.
Well, we thank you so much for being our guest today and sharing your insights from all of the things that you've done in education. And I'm glad to hear that you are out there still doing more things with the Eduprotocols, and you're still wearing
the
several
computer
hats.
using educators. And just wherever you go, I think you build a structure, a community, a professional network. And each time you change positions, you prune that tree, right?
That's right.
You maybe lose touch with some friends that you might circle back to, and you're going to grow a new side of the shrubbery.
I like that analogy.
Snuck the word shrubbery in there, just a little Monty Python reference.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on LinkedUp Podcast.
Thanks, folks, for having me. Good to meet you, Jamie. Good to see you again, Jerry.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.